Hello guys, welcome back. We're going to do another Q&A. This one's mostly going to be just one question. I'm going to do one quick question first, and then the rest of it's going to be all the same question. It's going to have a long answer to it. So let's get started. First question is, any thoughts on buying a Canon EOS RP refurbished or used? Yes, I have an opinion on that. Don't buy it. I know it's a good price. It's full frame. Don't buy it. They cut too many corners. If you want spend a little bit more money, get the Canon EOS R if you can't afford the R6. The EOS R will be much better than the RP. You will not like the RP if you're taking pictures. It might be fine for video, but if you have pictures in mind, I'd avoid the RP. The second question, and the one I want to dwell on for a while, I'm a semi-professional, I think, in photography. So he thinks he's a semi-professional in photography. Today marks my 9th month in this business, and I had a friend of mine approach me about possibly being the photographer for a wedding. Now, I did not accept immediately. I had to look at what I'm currently shooting, I had to look at what I'm currently shooting with and decided to ask. I have a Canon M5 and M50 alongside 4 lenses. Any pointers for a potential new wedding photographer, and should I get a new camera ASAP? Okay, first of all, if you've only been shooting pictures for 9 months, you're not ready for wedding photography. You need to go as a second shooter to a wedding with a photographer that's been shooting for years. The question people always ask, oh, I've got this camera, I've got this lens, I'm ready to shoot a wedding. No, you're not. Believe me, I've done weddings for 39 years. There's a lot more to photographing a wedding than just the equipment that you have. Now, don't get me wrong, you do need the right equipment. I suggest you need 2 full frames. You need cards with dual memory card slots. You're going to need your computer. You're going to need a backup hard drive. There's a lot of stuff you need. But you've got to have the photography down when you get to a wedding. You don't have time when you're at a wedding to think, oh, which lens do I need to use on this shot? Or maybe I should save it and do it on that picture. Maybe I should save my 85 for later. That stuff has to come to you instantly. What you are doing when you are at a wedding is you're dealing with people. You've got a bride and groom who's got their big day. They're probably a little stressed out because no wedding ever goes perfect. There's always something wrong with the flowers or the cakes being late. There's just always something. In 39 years, very, very few weddings have gone 100% as planned. As most things in life don't go 100% as planned. But wedding photography is probably the hardest type of photography to get into, and you're going to need the most experience to get into. I highly suggest, to be a wedding photographer, you find a professional photographer in your area and you go as a second shooter. I would say for at least 6 months to a year, go as a second shooter, even if you have to do it for free, because you'll be amazed what you'll run into at weddings. I've mentioned before in past videos, you've got wedding coordinators, and then you'll have people that are late, and you're going to have people not being where they're supposed to be. You're going to need a second person with you when you start doing weddings on your own to be able to help you pose, to get people lined up. Like when I'm shooting one group, my wife is getting the next group of people ready to bring them in, because it has to be a quick process. Because first of all, when you get to the wedding, you generally start with the guys. You get let's say for this wedding, the bride and groom aren't going to see each other. More traditional. Sometimes they do now, but for this wedding we're going to describe a traditional wedding. So to start with, the bride and groom don't see each other. So we're going to start with the guys, him and the groomsman. Hopefully his parents are there and ready. We can get those shots. Then we will hide them. We'll bring out the bride. We'll have to clear everybody out because you don't want anybody seeing the bride getting her pictures made. We'll do the bride maybe first time seeing her dad. We'll do bride and bridesmaids, maybe bride and parents, that sort of thing. And then you send them back about 30 minutes before the ceremony to get ready for the ceremony. Because, it can be hot if you're outside shooting. Just give them a little time to take a deep breath and get ready for the ceremony. Well, the ceremony is going to be about 30, 45 minutes long. As soon as the ceremony is over, I usually tell my bride and groom, it's going to be about 45 minutes till we get you to the reception, because you have to do full wedding parties. You have to do families. And since the bride and groom didn't see each other beforehand, you work your way down from the big shots till you've got just the bride and groom, and you're going 10 to 15 minutes with just the bride and groom, because that is the most important part of the wedding, in my opinion, are the shots, the bride and groom together. You get everybody out of the building, get everybody to the reception so that you've got just the bride and groom for the cool shots, the romantic shots, just the amazing shots that's really going to set their wedding apart of the bride and groom. When you're done with them, you go to the reception. Sometimes they're announced, sometimes they're not. If they're announced, you have to be there to shoot the pictures. everybody coming in being announced. Then they come in, they may do their first dance. You're in the first dance. They may sit down and eat. Then you've got wedding cake, garter bouquet, leaving. You've got a lot of different things going on during the ceremony. So it doesn't really matter. I think he mentioned, do I need to buy a new camera? Well, if you're asking that question, that tells you you're not ready for a wedding. And that equipment definitely isn't ready for a wedding. You didn't list the lenses that you have, but probably with that equipment, you probably don't have any really good lenses. You're going to really need something, at least a 24 to 105. It'll go down to f4. But I would highly suggest having a 24 to 70 that goes down to 2.8. I would highly suggest having an 85 that at least goes down to 1.8, a 50 millimeter that goes down to at least 1.8, maybe a 16 millimeter that goes down to 2.8. And you've got to know up here in your head what to use without even giving it thought, because you are moving people, you are doing poses, you're setting shots, and you can't miss any of these shots. You give your bride and groom. The first thing you need to do before you book a wedding is get your bride and groom a wedding contract, what they're getting, how long you're staying, when you're leaving. That way nobody is surprised by what they're getting after the wedding is over. They might say, well, you promised us we were going to get this and you didn't get it. Well, you've got a contract. Is it on the shot list? Is it in the contract? If it's not, you're covered. Shooting a wedding and not being ready for it is a great way to get sued. And you don't want to get sued for that, because they can sue you for all kinds of stuff. They may force you to fly people back in from out of town to restage it. I am insured by the Professional Photographers of America, and we have insurance. You also, when you're shooting, you're going to really need a camera that has 2 memory card slots. Now, you don't have to have 2 memory card slots, but at a wedding, it's somewhere you don't want you do not want an SD card to go bad. So having a camera that has 2 memory card slots is fantastic at a wedding, because if one's corrupted, you've got another one to fall back on. You really have to know what you're looking for. So say you're in there and the bride is getting ready, you have to know the shots to catch, because you need to catch the expressions more than just, oh, mom putting on the necklace. It's the expressions that you want to catch, and you can only get this kind of stuff with experience. Now, of course, I understand that you have to start getting experience at some point. You can't just start out with 30 years experience, but that's why I said earlier, you need to go as a second photographer, I would say, for at least a year, and get 10 to 15 weddings minimum under your belt before you even think about doing a wedding on your own. You've got to know how to use your flashes. Flashes inside is different than flashes outside. You need to know how to use high-speed sync. There's a lot of things you need to know at a wedding. It's not, hey, I shot some good family pictures. I got some pictures of this waterfall over here. I got some nice sunsets. Hey, I'm ready to shoot a wedding. It does not work like that. I promise. I can't tell you through the years how many people I've had call me and say, well, you're a little bit too expensive. We've got somebody who's going to do it for about half price. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And about 80% of the time, I'll get a call about a month later. They never delivered the pictures. The pictures are terrible. Can you fix them? It's endless what we hear. You get what you pay for at a wedding. If you're paying somebody that's been doing it for 10 years, you're going to probably pay a certain price. If you're dealing with somebody that's been doing it 20 years, you'll have another price. If you're having somebody that's been shooting for about 5 years, you'll have another price. And if you're dealing with somebody who's been shooting for as long as I have, over 35 years, you'll probably have another price. But realize with all that comes a lot of experience, and there will be a lot of shots that somebody that's got 20 years of experience will get that somebody with 3 to 5 years experience won't get. So it doesn't mean that if you hire somebody that's only been shooting for 5 years that you're not hiring a good photographer. They can be very good at 5 years of experience. It's just the more experience somebody has, the more than likely the better your pictures are going to be. It's the same way with somebody working on your car. Do you want a mechanic working on your car that's been working on it for 3 years or 4 years, or do you want somebody that's been doing it for over 30? And that's the case with about anything. I mean, if you have a heart attack, you want your doctor to be very experienced. You don't want somebody who's new, just out of college. Now, they're doctors and they can do it, but you'd probably prefer somebody with 20 years experience. And it's the same way in weddings. Wedding photography is probably one of the ways I see photographers mess up more than any other, because there's so much that goes into a wedding. Until you shoot them, you just don't really understand what all goes on. The pictures that you're taking, that's really 30-40% of the wedding. It's dealing with people, dealing with the situations, getting people around. By the time you get to the reception, you're going to probably have some drunk people. I've had brides come in 3 hours late. You've got to know I've had brides crying because, the flowers may be wrong, or you've had some kind of family issues going on. They're not happy, and, there's always something going on. So you need somebody that can take control. You need a photographer that can walk in and say, look, it's going to be okay. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make this right. We're going to make it fun because it's your big day. Even though everything didn't go exactly right, it's still going to be the most fun day you've ever had. And then you have to be able to deliver on that promise. Ever have to ask yourself, am I ready to shoot a wedding? 99% of the time, the answer is no, you are not. At least shoot with somebody for 6 months, but try to go for at least a year. Try to be at least 15 weddings as a second shooter before you even think about going with somebody else. And even then, take somebody with at least as much experience as you got. So there's 2 of you at the wedding. That way you're less likely to miss shots. You don't want to mess up someone's wedding because it can end up costing you big time. Before the wedding, there's a lot of work to be done. Contracts, shot list, laying the wedding out. You got to lay out a timeline. Then the wedding day, you've got to kind of run the entire wedding for everybody for the pictures. After the wedding, you've got a lot of editing. You've got to post the pictures online. You've got to deal with people calling, asking you questions. Wedding is one of the most intense situations you can ever get yourself involved in. And again, you don't want to get sued for messing it up. Photographers trying to do weddings has probably given them photography the worst reputation other than anything else. Because you'll hear, oh, I hired this photographer, quote unquote, and he just messed up my wedding. Everything was blurry. I never got any pictures. Well, you're not dealing with a professional photographer. Make sure the photographer you're dealing with is a member of the Professional Photographers of America, because that way they're a photographer and they're insured. Don't just hire Joe Schmo over here because he has a Canon 5D Mark III. That's a nice camera. It can be a nice camera. That don't mean he knows how to use it. And you've got to use flashes and reflectors. It's almost never ending at a wedding. There's problems that are constantly coming your way. You have split seconds to make these decisions. So the only way to get experience is to do it. But just don't do it alone for the first year. Go with a photographer who knows what he's doing. And then when you're ready to try to step out to do weddings on your own, try to start small weddings and take somebody with you to help you pose, somebody that maybe knows a little bit about photography that can help you shoot, and then grow from there. There's good money to be made in photographing weddings. But if you start off the wrong way and you get a bad reputation, you won't recover from it. So that's my suggestion for you guys. And if you want to be a wedding photographer and you have questions, send me your questions. I'll put my email down at the bottom. I'll give you ideas of the equipment you need, how you need to learn, experience that you need to get, and maybe who you can work with. I can find somebody in your area that is a PPA member and maybe set you guys up and get you working with them. But I'm not trying to discourage you from photographing a wedding. I'm trying to get you to not get into a situation that you're not ready for. So anyway, with that said, you guys have a great week, and please hit subscribe on our site, and feel free to reach me by my email down at the bottom. You guys have a great day. Thank you.